The coffee had gone cold. Emily Carter wrapped both hands around the mug anyway, not because it offered warmth, but because it gave her something to hold. The cafe was called The Lantern, a name that promised coziness, and delivered on it fairy lights wound around exposed brick. A chalkboard menu with crooked letters, tables small enough that strangers' elbows touched. On any other night, she might have liked it here. She had been waiting for 47 minutes. She knew this because she had a habit, born from years of back-to-back meetings, of noting exact times. The blind date was scheduled for 7. It was now 7:47. The waiter, a young man with kind eyes and a slightly embarrassed expression, had already brought her a second coffee. On the house. And she had not missed the pity in the gesture. Outside, Brooklyn was doing what Brooklyn did in late December, trying its best to be beautiful, and mostly succeeding. Snow fell in that particular New York way, slow and deliberate, as though it too had considered the dramatic potential of the evening and decided to lean in. The windows of the Lantern held the street in a soft frame cabs with their orange lights, a family pulling a small child on a sled, a couple walking with their arms locked and their breath making clouds. Emily looked at all of it the way she looked at quarterly reports, with full attention and no particular feeling. She was 36 years old. She ran a company of 400 people. She had, on 3 separate occasions, appeared on lists with the word "powerful" in the title. She had also, 8 months ago, signed divorce papers in a conference room on the 42nd floor of a building she half-owned, using a pen her lawyer handed her, while her ex-husband sat on the other side of the table looking at the ceiling. She had not cried. She had considered it a point of professional pride. Her friend Natalie had arranged this. "Just coffee," Natalie had said. "He's a good person. I promise you." Emily, just meet him. Christmas Eve, nothing serious. Just stop being alone for one evening. Emily had said she was not alone. She was unencumbered. And Natalie had said that was the saddest thing she'd ever heard. And Emily had said, fine, send me his number. She had not called. She had only texted the address. The waiter drifted past and she caught his eye and smiled in a way that said, "I'm fine. Please don't look at me with that expression anymore." He nodded and moved on. At the next table, a couple in matching scarves were taking a photograph of their food. 2 older women near the window were sharing a dessert and laughing. A man alone at the bar was reading a book with a red cover. Emily had not brought anything to read. She had not thought she would be alone long enough to need something to read. Her phone showed no messages. She thought, without intending to, of something her ex-husband had said 2 years before the divorce, during one of those quiet, honest conversations that happen sometimes at the end of a marriage, when both people have stopped performing and have not yet started fighting. "You don't wait for anything," he had said, not unkindly. "Not for people, not for situations to change. You decide, and you act, and the world either catches up or it doesn't. I admire it. I also," and here he had paused, "I also find it very lonely to be around." She had not known what to do with that sentence at the time. She still didn't. The cafe door opened. Cold air moved across the room. He was not what she had imagined. She had not spent much time imagining, but there had been a few seconds of it on the cab ride over. Half watching the city slide past, and whatever she had pictured, it was not this. A man in his mid-30s, jacket dark with wet snow, hair disordered, breathing as though he had been running. He stood in the doorway for a moment and looked around the cafe with the particular expression of a person who expects to be judged and has decided not to care. He found her table. Their eyes met. His face did something complicated: relief, embarrassment, apology, all arriving at once. He came over. He pulled out the chair across from her and did not sit immediately. He stood, jacket dripping slightly on the floor, and said, "I'm sorry. I know how this looks. My daughter was in the emergency room." Emily looked at him. "Is she all right?" she asked. Something shifted in his face. He had clearly been braced for something else. "She is now. Asthma. It comes on fast sometimes in the cold. I stayed until her breathing settled, and then I probably should have called. I have your number." I should have called, he exhaled. I'm Daniel Brooks. Emily Carter. He sat down. His hands, she noticed, were slightly trembling, not from cold, or not entirely from cold. He was a large man, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that had probably been very young-looking at 20, and now carried its years honestly. There was plaster dust on the left knee of his jeans. I'm going to understand completely if you want to leave, he said. The waiter appeared. Daniel looked at the menu for exactly 2 seconds and ordered water. Emily studied him. You drove here? Took the subway. Walked the last part. He ran a hand through his wet hair. Natalie said, you lived in Manhattan. I thought it seemed easier for you. She had, in fact, driven a company car. The irony of this landed quietly. How old is your daughter? 7, Emma. He said the name the way parents say their children's names, with a particular kind of gravity, as though the word itself carried weight. She's with my neighbor now, Mrs. Petrov. She keeps cookies in a tin for Emma, so Emma is probably fine, more than fine. A small, involuntary smile. Better than me. The waiter brought his water. Daniel wrapped his hands around the glass. Why did you wait? He asked. She had not expected that. She had expected apology, explanation. The careful social architecture of a first date that was going poorly, not this a direct question, quiet and genuine, with no performance behind it. I don't know, she said. Which was the truth. He nodded, as though her answer was reasonable. Outside, the snow continued. They talked for an hour and a half. Later, she would not be able to reconstruct the exact sequence of it, what led to what, which disclosure opened the door for the next. That was the nature of certain conversations. They followed their own logic, subterranean, and you arrived somewhere without quite knowing the route. She learned that he had studied architecture, that he had graduated, worked for a firm in Manhattan for 4 years, done well, that his wife, Claire, had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer when Emma was 11 months old, and that over the following 2 years, treatment, remission, relapse, the hospital stays that stretched into weeks, he had gradually moved his work to the edges of his life, first cutting hours, then freelancing, then stopping entirely. That after Claire died, he had needed to be home, reliable, present, and so he had started working with his hands instead, plumbing, initially, because someone from the building had mentioned a job and he needed money immediately. That he had been doing it for 5 years now. Do you miss it? She asked. The architecture. He thought about it. I miss the drawings, he said. The way a space looks on paper before it exists. Everything's still possible. He paused. The actual work, the client meetings, the approvals, the way something always goes wrong between the drawing and the building. I don't miss that. What does Emma think you do? She thinks I fix things that are broken. He smiled. Which is accurate. Emily told him about the company not in the way she usually described it, the metrics and the growth curve, but something closer to the actual experience of it. The way she had started it at 29 with a business partner who was now her largest shareholder and occasionally her adversary. The way she thought about it the last thing before sleep and the first thing on waking. The way her ex-husband had once said that the company was the most intimate relationship she had ever had, and she had initially been offended by this and had later concluded he was not wrong. Daniel listened. He did not offer solutions or pivot to his own parallel experience. He just listened, which was rarer than it should have been. Natalie said you were divorced, he said. 8 months ago. Was it? He stopped. Sorry. That's not my question to ask. It was mutual, she said. Which is another way of saying it was nobody's fault, and also completely our fault. He wanted a different kind of life than the one I was building. He wanted someone who came home. She looked at the table. I was trying to be fair to him. I kept thinking he's not wrong. He's not wrong to want that. It just wasn't what I could give. The cafe had thinned out. The couple, with the matching scarves, had gone. The older women by the window were putting on their coats. Emily's second coffee was fully cold now, and she had not noticed when that had happened. Daniel had ordered only water. She had seen him look at the menu twice, and both times choose nothing. It was subtle, the calculation of a man who was always watching the cost of things, and she felt something shift in her chest. Something she didn't immediately name. "Tell me about Emma," she said. His entire expression changed. He talked about his daughter the way he had talked about the architectural drawings, with a kind of precise, wondering attention, as though he was still slightly astonished that she existed. She was 7 3/4, which she insisted was different from 7. She had her mother's dark hair, and Daniel's insistence on naming things correctly. Not a bird, but a white-throated sparrow. She had been reading since 4 1/2, which had alarmed her pediatrician, who called it atypical, and Emma, who had been listening from behind the door, had come in and said atypical means not usual, and not usual doesn't mean wrong, and the pediatrician had not known how to respond. She was currently on a mission to read every book about weather. Not children's books. Actual meteorology books, the ones with the charts. She had informed Daniel last week that the naming of hurricanes was arbitrary and unscientific, and she had a better system. Emily found herself smiling. "She sounds like a lot," she said. "She's everything," he said, simply. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and immediately his face went into the particular attentiveness of a parent. Emily watched him. "Is she all right?" She's asking if he looked at the screen, and his expression did something she couldn't quite read. He showed her the phone. The text, from Mrs. Petrov, included a voice message from Emma. "Tell Daddy that Mrs. Petrov says he's on a date. Tell him I want to know." "Is the lady nice?" A silence sat between them. "What should I tell her?" he asked. Emily considered. "Tell her she's being nosy." He typed this. A pause. Then his phone lit up with a string of laughing emojis, and then, "That means yes. Nosy means you're interesting." Emily looked at this for a moment. She was aware of something happening to her, not dramatically. Not in the cinematic way that things happened in the stories people told about love. Something quieter, the way a room changes when someone opens a window, an almost imperceptible shift in the quality of the air. "She drew a picture this morning," Daniel said. He was looking at his phone with that particular mixture of love and helplessness that parenting seemed to produce. Before she knew about tonight, she was drawing her family. He paused. "She drew herself and me, and then she drew an extra figure and labeled it Daddy's new friend in quotation marks. In quotation marks. She's been learning about how quotation marks show uncertainty." He shook his head. "She's 7 3/4. 7 3/4. He looked up. "I don't tell you this to, I'm not trying to." He stopped. "I just thought it was funny. That she knew, somehow. Before I did." Emily didn't say anything. Through the window, a street musician was playing something slow and almost recognizable, the notes arriving muffled through the glass. The snow had slowed, but not stopped. The lantern had become very quiet around them. "I should go," Daniel said. "Emma should be in bed. She had a difficult evening." He began to reach for his jacket. "Thank you for staying." "You didn't have to." He stood. Emily looked at her cold coffee. She looked at the door. She looked at him, standing there with his damp jacket and his honest face. This man who had left his career to be home, who talked about his daughter like she was a small miracle, who had ordered only water all evening, without acknowledging it once. She said, "Can I come with you?" He looked at her as though he had misheard. "To make sure Emma is all right," she added. "And because she stopped, I don't have anywhere to be." This was true, and also not the whole truth. She had an apartment that was very clean and very quiet, and very much the kind of apartment that said a person lives here who is very certain of herself, and she did not want to go back to it tonight. They walked to the subway through snow that had softened from falling to drifting. Emily was wearing heels, which she had chosen the way she chose everything for how they made her look, which was tall and composed, and they were now making small punctures in the snowpack on the sidewalk. She did not mention this. Daniel matched his pace to hers, without drawing attention to the fact that he was doing it. On the train, they stood and held the same pole because there were no seats, and the car rocked and jerked in the familiar way of the Brooklyn-bound F, and around them, people carried shopping bags and tired children, and the specific end of Christmas Eve energy of a city winding down. Someone's bag of groceries split and oranges rolled across the floor, and 3 strangers helped gather them. And there was a brief moment of goodwill that happened, and then dissolved, the way those moments do on subways. Daniel caught one of the oranges near Emily's foot and handed it back, and the man receiving it said, "Merry Christmas," and Daniel said, "Merry Christmas" back, and Emily watched this small transaction and thought about how long it had been since she had been on a subway. 2 years, maybe 3. She had a car. There was always a car. Before the car, there had been taxis, and before the taxis, before the company, before the growth, before the lists with powerful in the title, she had taken the subway every day, had known the particular grammar of it. When to move toward the door, how to angle your body in a crowded car. The unspoken protocol of headphones and eye contact. She had forgotten she used to know how to do this. "You're cold," Daniel said. She was. Her coat was good, but her feet were wet now from the snow, and the car was drafty. He unlooped the scarf from around his neck and held it out. It was a plain gray scarf, washed many times, exactly the kind of thing you'd find in the drawer of someone who bought it, because it was useful, and kept it because it still was. She took it. She wrapped it around her neck, and it was warm, and it smelled faintly of wood shavings and something she couldn't name. And she stood in the rocking train with a stranger's scarf around her neck, and felt, for the first time in a long time, like she was somewhere real. The building was a 4-story walk-up in Greenpoint, the kind of building that had been lived in by many different kinds of people across many different decades, and bore the evidence of all of them. A lobby with a cracked tile floor, and a row of metal mailboxes, half of which had labels in different handwritings. The elevator had an out-of-order sign that looked as though it had been there for some time. They climbed 3 flights. On the 3rd-floor landing, the door of 3B opened before Daniel reached it, and a woman of about 70 in a floral housecoat looked out. Mrs. Petrov. She glanced at Emily with the bright, evaluative speed of a person who has been waiting to do this. "She's asleep," Mrs. Petrov said. Finally, she fought it. She wanted to wait. She handed Daniel a key, and then looked at Emily and said, in a tone that contained a complete sentence's worth of opinion, "You have nice shoes." "Thank you," Emily said. Mrs. Petrov went back inside. Daniel unlocked 3A, and they went in. The apartment was small. This was the first thing the way the space itself announced its dimensions immediately, without apology. A living room that was also a dining room. A kitchen separated by a half wall, 2 doors at the back. But small was not the same as bare. Every surface had been lived on. A wooden bookshelf covered most of one wall, its shelves organized with the deliberate chaos of a child who cared deeply about her books but applied her own system. There were drawings on the refrigerator, at least 12 of them, held up by mismatched magnets. A Christmas tree in the corner, small, real, listing slightly to the left, had been decorated in the way trees get decorated when a 7-year-old is the primary decorator. Tinsel clustered in certain spots, ornaments at reachable height, a star on top that was slightly crooked. Near the base of the tree, a small plate with 2 cookies on it and a glass of milk. Emily stood in the doorway and looked at the room. She had been in many apartments in her life, many houses, many spaces that had been styled and curated and presented. She had, in fact, hired someone to style her own apartment after the divorce, to make it feel intentional rather than empty. This room had not been styled by anyone. It had simply been filled, over years, by 2 people who lived in it. Daniel was in the kitchen, filling a kettle. "Tea?" he said. I think I have chamomile, and something that says Forest Blend, which Emma bought because she liked the picture on the box." "Forest Blend," Emily said. She moved to the bookshelf and read the spines. "The Field Guide to North American Weather." "Clouds." "A Complete Guide." "How to Read the Sky." "The Secret Garden." "A Wrinkle in Time." "Introduction to Structural Engineering." This one on a higher shelf, slightly separated from the others, older. She pulled it out. Inside the front cover, in careful handwriting, D. Brooks, Architecture 201. She put it back. On the low shelf, at child height, a stack of drawings. Not the ones on the refrigerator, these were in a folder, the kind with a clip. She did not open it, but the top sheet was visible. A house with a sun, a tree, two figures, one tall and one small, both with round faces and stick arms. Below them, in large crayon letters, me and Daddy, and to the right of the tall figure, slightly separate, a third shape not fully drawn, more of an outline, a question mark made of lines, labeled in quotation marks, friend. The kettle began to whistle. Daniel came in with 2 mugs and stopped when he saw what she was looking at. She draws the same house every time, he said. We don't live in a house. I don't know where the house comes from. Maybe it's a future house, Emily said. He handed her the mug. The tea was very hot and smelled like pine, which was either what forest blend meant or what the proximity to the Christmas tree was doing. She's going to wake up, Daniel said, and she's going to know you're here, and she's going to want to. He hesitated. She's very social. I just want to warn you, I've run a company for 7 years, Emily said. I can handle a 7-year-old. 7 3/4, he said. From behind one of the back doors, a small voice said, Daddy? She appeared in the doorway in pajamas with small clouds printed on them, her dark hair compressed on one side from sleep, her eyes tracking immediately and without hesitation to Emily. You came, she said, not to Daniel, to Emily. I did, Emily said. Emma processed this. She was small for her age, or perhaps not small so much as precisely made everything about her compact and considered. She had Daniel's eyes, dark and direct, and something around the mouth that must have been her mother's. Are you cold? Emma said. You're wearing Daddy's scarf. Emily had forgotten she was still wearing it. He lent it to me. I was on the subway. We take the subway all the time, Emma said. It's more efficient than cabs in traffic, especially on the F line between 14 and 34th. She moved to the couch and folded herself onto it with the easy authority of a person in their own territory. Do you want a cookie? We made them for Santa, but we made extra. Emma, Daniel said. I made extra on purpose, Emma said, to Emily, confidentially. I always make extra. She was not what Emily had expected. Children, in Emily's experience, which was limited, she had never particularly sought out the company of children, were either shy or aggressive, cautious or demanding. Emma was neither. She was simply present, fully, unguardedly present, looking at Emily with an expression of calm and genuine interest, as though Emily were a weather pattern she intended to understand. What do you do? Emma asked. I run a company. What kind of company? Software. We make tools that help businesses communicate with each other. Emma considered this. So you help people talk to each other? In a way, that sounds important, Emma said, with the particular seriousness of a child who means it. People are bad at talking to each other. My teacher says communication is the #1 source of conflict. Your teacher isn't wrong, Emily said. Daniel was watching both of them from the kitchen doorway with an expression that was hard to read, not quite surprised, not quite relieved. Something in between. Daddy said you had to wait a long time, Emma said. Were you bored? What did you think about while you were waiting? It was, Emily realized, a better question than most adults would ask. She thought about it. I thought about whether I was the kind of person who waits, she said. Emma considered this with genuine seriousness. And are you? I don't know yet, Emily said. Emma nodded as though this was a satisfying answer. I think waiting is brave, she said. In books, the people who wait are usually brave. The people who leave right away miss important things. She looked at Emily for one more moment, and then she said, Do you want to help us make cookies? We were going to make them tomorrow. But she looked at Daniel. Can we make them now? The Christmas ones? With the shapes? Daniel said, Emma, it's almost 9 o'clock. I slept already, Emma said. I'm not tired. I feel completely fine. You were in the ER 3 hours ago. That was my lungs, Emma said. My lungs are better. My hands are fine. This was how Emily Carter, CEO, came to be standing in a small kitchen in Greenpoint at 9:30 on Christmas Eve, pressing a cookie cutter shaped like a star into rolled dough, while a 7-year-old with authority issues directed operations from the kitchen doorway. "More flour on the rolling pin," Emma said. "There's already flour on the rolling pin." "More." Daniel, who was standing next to Emily, dusting a second cutter with the practiced calm of someone who had done this many times and had learned that resistance was futile, said quietly, "Just do what she says." "I heard that," Emma said. The kitchen was very small. Standing side by side at the counter, Emily and Daniel were close enough that she could feel the warmth of his arm near hers. She was still in the clothes she'd worn to the lantern, the silk blouse, the tailored trousers now with a dish towel tucked into her waistband as an improvised apron, flour on her left sleeve, a smear of dough on her wrist. She had not baked anything since she tried to remember. College, possibly. Her mother's kitchen, before. She had a kitchen in her apartment that was very well equipped by someone who had very good taste, and she used it for coffee and occasionally toast. "Now the eggs," Emma said. "Daddy usually does the eggs, but you can try." Daniel handed her an egg. She cracked it against the bowl. Half of it went into the bowl, and half went onto the counter. "Oh," Emily said. Emma pressed her lips together in the way of a child suppressing a laugh. "It's okay," she said. "Daddy did that too the first time. You have to be more, you have to be decisive. Like you mean it." Emily took the second egg and cracked it with more conviction. It went cleanly into the bowl. "Yes," Emma said, with satisfaction. "Like that." Daniel was looking at Emily. Not at the bowl, not at Emma, at Emily. She felt it before she turned to see it, some shift in the quality of his attention. When she met his eyes, he looked away quickly, but not quickly enough. She found that she did not mind. They mixed the dough. Emma supervised. The kitchen filled with the smell of vanilla and the particular warmth of an oven that has been running for a while. And the apartment was very quiet except for the small sounds of the work and Emma's commentary and, distantly, the city outside, which had its own Christmas Eve vocabulary of bells and traffic, and the occasional sound of someone's window letting out music. "When I grow up," Emma said, from her post in the doorway, "I'm going to have a big kitchen. With an island. Islands in kitchens are very useful." "What else will you have?" Emily asked. Emma thought about this with the same seriousness she applied to everything. "A weather station," she said. "On the roof. And a library. And a good coat rack, because Daddy always loses his coat." She paused. "And a dog." "What kind of dog?" "A medium dog," Emma said. "Not too small. Not too large. Medium is the most reasonable size." She watched them press the cookies onto the tray. "Emily?" It was the first time she'd used her name. Emily felt it like something warm. "Are you going to come back? After tonight?" The kitchen was very quiet. "Emma," Daniel said gently, "I'm just asking." Emma said. She was not embarrassed. She looked at Emily with those direct dark eyes and waited, without pressure, with the particular patience of a child who has learned to sit with uncertainty. Emily looked at the tray of star-shaped cookies, half of them slightly lopsided from her cuts, next to Daniel's neater ones. "I don't know yet," she said again. Emma seemed to find this, again, a satisfying answer. "Okay," she said. "That's honest." The cookies came out of the oven at 10:15. Emma ate one standing at the counter, leaving sugar on her chin, and declared them excellent, objectively. And then, with the sudden completeness of a very young person who has used up all their energy, announced that she was tired and went to bed without argument. Daniel and Emily stood in the kitchen, with the rest of the cookies cooling on the rack. He poured the remainder of the Forest Blend tea into 2 mugs. They took them to the living room and sat, she in the armchair and he on the couch, the Christmas tree listing between them, throwing small colored lights across the room. "She does that," Daniel said. "Runs hard, and then just stops. Like a switch. She's remarkable," Emily said. "She is." He said it simply, without false modesty. "She's the most remarkable thing I've ever been near." They were quiet for a while. The radiator made its domestic sound. Outside, the city had grown quieter in the way it does late on Christmas Eve, the particular stillness of a place that has decided to pause. "Tell me about Claire," Emily said. She wasn't sure why she said it. It felt presumptuous. Possibly, but it also felt like the next real thing to say. And she had learned, in business and in life, that the conversation you don't have is usually the most important one. Daniel looked at his mug for a moment. "She was funny," he said. "That's the thing people don't always know about people who are sick." Claire was very funny. She made jokes in the hospital that would have been inappropriate anywhere else, and the nurses loved her. He turned the mug in his hands. She was the kind of person who was curious about everything. She would have wanted to know about your company. She'd have asked you the same questions Emma asked, probably. He paused. Emma is very much like her. Does that make it harder? Or easier? He considered the question honestly. Both, he said. Both at once. It's the strangest thing, to love someone because of who they remind you of, and also because of who they are entirely on their own. Emily set her mug down. The lights on the tree moved slightly in the draft from the window. "I don't know how to be in a life the way you are," she said. She hadn't planned to say it. It arrived fully formed, the way true things sometimes did. "I mean actually in it. The subway, the cookies, the person who shows up." She stopped. "My ex-husband was right about me. I don't know how to be present in the way that matters." Daniel looked at her. "You've been present for 3 hours," he said. "You're here. I followed you home," she said. "That's different." "Is it?" She didn't answer. "You stayed in the cafe," he said, "for 47 minutes. In a place where anyone could see you, where it was clearly uncomfortable. You stayed." He leaned forward slightly. "That's not nothing, Emily." She looked at the Christmas tree. A light near the bottom was flickering, not quite going out, almost. She thought about how she would have found this irritating in her own apartment, the imperfection of it, the asymmetry, and how here it just seemed like a detail in a room that was full of details, each one accumulated over time, each one evidence of a life being lived in. "I don't have plans tomorrow," she said. She wasn't quite sure yet what she was saying. Daniel was very still. "Emma asked if you'd stay for Christmas," he said. "She asked me in the kitchen, when you were looking at the bookshelf. I told her that I wasn't going to." He stopped. "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to," Emily said. Outside, very faint, church bells, Christmas, arriving. "I'd like to," she said. "If that's all right." He looked at her for a long moment. This man who had ordered only water all evening, who had left his career to be home, who talked about his daughter like she was a small miracle, who had walked through snow to get somewhere he was already too late to matter, and had shown up anyway. "It's all right," he said. She slept in Emma's room, in the small bed with the weather-patterned duvet. Because Emma had announced, "I'll sleep with Daddy," he doesn't mind, with the certainty of a 7-year-old who has never once been wrong about what her father would agree to. Daniel had given Emily an oversized university sweatshirt and a pair of socks with small foxes on them, which she had accepted without comment, and she had lain in the narrow bed in the quiet apartment and listened to the particular silence of a sleeping household and felt, for the first time in a long time, that she was somewhere she was supposed to be. She woke to the sound of Emma's voice saying she's still here in a tone of pure satisfaction. She could hear Daniel's quieter response. She lay still for a moment, looking up at the ceiling, which had a small water stain in one corner that someone had painted over, and which had returned, as water stains do, impervious to repair. A drawing was taped near the window. A son with a face, wearing a hat. Labeled, "Mr. Sun." Not scientifically accurate. She got up. In the kitchen, Emma was at the counter. She had put on a paper crown from somewhere red, slightly crushed, and was arranging the cookies they had made last night on a plate with the focused care of a person doing something important. She looked up when Emily appeared. "Good morning," Emma said. "The cookies are for breakfast." "Daddy says cookies for breakfast is not nutritious," But it's Christmas, so the rules are different. I have decided they count as carbohydrates. That seems correct, Emily said. Daniel was at the stove, and the kitchen smelled of coffee and eggs and butter. And the morning light was coming through the small window in the particular way of winter light, flat and gray, and somehow very clean. The Christmas tree lights were on. The plate with last night's cookies for Santa was empty, a careful adult performance of magic, Emily assumed, completed sometime in the small hours. She put out the empty plate herself, Daniel said quietly, from the stove, not turning around. She knows, actually, I think. She just likes the ritual. Emma appeared at Emily's side with the plate of cookies. These are the ones we made, she said. The ones that aren't perfectly shaped are the ones you made. I labeled them. She held up a star-shaped cookie with a small paper flag stuck to it, a toothpick flag that said Emily in careful crayon letters. Emily took it. Thank you, she said. You need to eat it now, Emma said. While it's still, she stopped. She set the plate down and reached under the counter and produced a folded piece of paper. I made this in the night. I woke up and I made it. She held it out. Emily opened it. It was a drawing, done in the earnest, fully committed style of a child who is a very good drawer but who doesn't know yet that she is. A table, and around the table, 3 figures. One small one with dark curly hair labeled me, one tall one with a serious face labeled Daddy, and one, across from Daddy, with yellow hair and a red dress that was presumably the silk blouse interpreted through the lens of a 7-year-old, labeled, this time, without quotation marks, Emily, below the drawing, in the large deliberate letters of a child who is practicing her handwriting. Emily stood in the small kitchen with the folded paper in her hands and the cookie with her name on it, and the morning light coming through the window, and she felt something that she did not know how to name, not because it was too large to name, but because it was too specific, too precise, a particular frequency she had not encountered before. Her eyes were wet. She was not, in general, a person whose eyes got wet. Emma was watching her, not with alarm, not with the discomfort of a child who has inadvertently caused something with a quiet recognition, as though she had intended exactly this and was simply waiting for it to arrive. Are you real? Emily said. She did not mean it as a question for Emma. She was not certain who she meant it for. Emma, however, treated it as a reasonable question. Yes, she said. I'm very real. I checked this morning. Daniel made a sound that was not quite a laugh. Emily looked at him. He was looking back at her. This man, she had met 6 hours ago, with his honest face and his honest life. Flour still somehow in his hair, holding a spatula with a foxed-up sock visible at his ankle, where his jeans had ridden up. Emma, Daniel said, why don't you go see if Santa left anything by the tree? Emma's eyes went wide. She had, clearly, been exercising tremendous self-control about the tree. She sprinted from the kitchen. Emily and Daniel were alone for 30 seconds, which was all it turned out to be. She crossed the kitchen, which was 5 steps, and she stood in front of him, and he set down the spatula, and she said, I don't know how to do this. I don't either, he said. I haven't in 5 years. I haven't. He exhaled. I don't know if I know how anymore. Maybe that's all right, she said. Maybe neither of us knowing is the point. He reached up and took a small piece of flour from her hair from the night before. Somehow still there, and she thought, this is what he does. He notices the small things. He shows up. He orders only water and doesn't mention it. He walks through the snow. She kissed him. It was a brief kiss, careful, morning light, quiet. It tasted of the forest blend tea and the fact of all the things they did not yet know about each other, which was most things. Daddy, Emma's voice from the living room. Emily, come look. They went. 3 months later, it was a Sunday in late March, which in New York always arrived with that particular quality of surprised warmth. As though the city had forgotten spring was coming and been caught off guard by it. The window in the apartment in Greenpoint was open, and the curtains were doing the thing curtains do in a breeze, lifting and falling, and the Sunday morning sounds of the neighborhood came through someone's music. Two people talking on the street. A dog. Emily had a standing Sunday. That was how she had come to think of it. Not a commitment. Exactly, that was a word that still required careful handling, but a pattern. Sunday mornings with breakfast, Sunday afternoons with Emma, and whatever the current project was. Currently, the project was a weather station, a real one, built from a kit Emma had received for her birthday, and which she had been assembling with a precision that had surprised even Daniel. Emily was getting better at eggs. Not perfectly, she still had a tendency toward overcaution in the moment of cracking, which Emma found amusing, and had stopped trying to correct, which Emily was choosing to interpret as affection. Emma was in her room, dressing, her commentary on the process audible through the closed door. She had strong feelings about her Sunday outfit. These feelings were non-negotiable. Daniel was at the counter, reading something on his phone. He had, over the last 3 months, gotten a haircut and started on a freelance architectural project, just a small one, a consultation for a friend's renovation, but he moved differently. She noticed it. She didn't say anything about it, because some things were better left to be what they were, unexamined. She had been late to a board meeting on a Wednesday because Emma had a recital, and the recital had run long and Emily had stayed for all of it. She had sent a message to the board chair saying she'd be delayed without explanation. The board chair had asked, later, if everything was all right. Yes, she'd said. Everything's good. Emma appeared from her room in a yellow dress and her weather station kit under one arm. I've been thinking, Emma said, by way of greeting, about the placement of the barometric sensor. It needs to be sheltered from direct wind but still able to take accurate readings. I've identified 3 possible locations on the fire escape. Good morning to you too, Emily said. Good morning, Emma said. She put the kit on the table and opened it with the focused joy of someone approaching a problem they are confident they will solve. Daniel? She had started calling him Daniel in mid-February. No one had asked why. He had not questioned it. Emily had noticed that his expression when Emma said it had something in it, she could only describe as moved, not by the name itself but by the choice, the small declaration of a child deciding who the people in her life were. Yes, he said. Can Emily help with the sensor placement? She has good spatial reasoning. She arranged the bookshelves last time, and they were better. Daniel looked at Emily over Emma's head. There was something in his eyes that had been there since Christmas morning. Quiet, deliberate. The expression of a man who has decided to be careful with something valuable. I can help, Emily said. Emma nodded, already studying the instructions. I thought so, she said. Outside, the wind moved the curtains. Somewhere in the building, a door closed. The apartment held the 3 of them in its small, full space, the drawings on the refrigerator, the books at child height, the Christmas tree gone but its place still visible in the small ring of dried needles on the floor that Emma had forbidden anyone to vacuum because she said it was a memory. Emily looked at this ring of dried needles on the floor of a small apartment in Greenpoint and thought about the word home, what it meant, who got to have it. She had spent 36 years building a life that was large and full of achievement and almost entirely without waiting. She had been good at it. She had not known, until a cold cafe on Christmas Eve and a man who arrived wet and breathless and 47 minutes late, that something was missing from the architecture. Not everything, not most things, but something specific, the experience of staying, the bravery of ordinary waiting, the understanding that the most important things could not be built, they had to be shown up for, repeatedly, in small and unglamorous ways, and that this was its own kind of work. And she was, it turned out, capable of it. Emma looked up from the kit. She looked at Emily, and then at Daniel, and then back at Emily. And her expression was the expression of someone who has assembled a complex thing and found that all the pieces fit. You know what? She said. What? Emily said. You're part of our family now. She said it the way she said most things. Plainly, with certainty, without drama. As though it were a fact that had been true for some time, and she was only now naming it out loud. Daniel set down his phone. Emily looked at this child, this 7 3/4-year-old who had decided. without being asked, to draw her into the picture, to label her without quotation marks, to fold a drawing in the middle of the night and hand it over in the morning, like a document that required signing. "I think you might be right," Emily said. Emma returned to her barometric sensor. Daniel reached across the counter and found Emily's hand and held it briefly, and then let it go. And they stood in the morning light of a Sunday in late March, the window open, the curtains moving. Outside, somewhere, spring. Home is not the place where you live. It is the place where someone waits, and where you learn, at last, to stay.